ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and please join me in welcoming Kelvin all the way from New York. Kelvin, please.
Thank you. Good morning. So before I start, I would just like to thank Amazon for the opportunity to speak today. As mentioned, I'm Kelvin. I'm the Regional Director for US Southeast at Enterprise Singapore, and I'm based out of New York City. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Enterprise Singapore is part of a larger family of agencies that look across growing the Singapore economy. And we were formed by the merger of Spring Singapore and International Enterprise Singapore a few years ago. Our sister agency, the Economic Development Board, looks at growing inward investment into Singapore. On the other hand, Enterprise Singapore's mandate is to grow stronger enterprises by building capabilities, strengthening innovation, and accessing global opportunities. So we do that through four main ways. We drive enterprise transformation and growth. We strengthen Singapore as a global node for innovation and startups. We develop Singapore as a top global trading hub, and we build trust in Singapore products and services. We have a global network of over 35 overseas centers, including the New York office where I'm based. And through our global network, we aim to help Singapore companies tap on business opportunities all around the world. So you might be asking, why the USA? So let me touch on a few reasons why Singapore companies or companies in your region should consider expanding to the US market. Firstly, I think the US is home to one of the largest consumer markets in the world, which Singapore enterprises can tap on. For comparison, the US consumer market represents a $6.6 trillion opportunity compared to just $30 billion in Singapore. US consumers also come with a much higher spending power compared to other parts of the world. For reference, US has a retail spend per capita of 20,000 USD, while China's retail spend per capita is 1/5 of this number at $4,000. Lastly, many companies find that US consumers are better aligned to what we call conscious consumer values. And in some cases, companies might find their product or brand positioning more suited to the US consumer archetype than even Singapore. For instance, in the US, surveys show that 70% of consumers think that it is important that a brand is sustainable. On the contrary, only 32% of consumers in Singapore in similar surveys make purchasing decisions based on sustainability. So as you already know, e-commerce is a great way that sellers from Singapore and the region can reach US end customers. And to help visualize this journey, I've developed the following map, drawing from various conversations I've had with e-commerce sellers over the years. From experience, I found that successful sellers first commit proper time into market research to determine gaps. And once they identify such a market gap, sellers then work with the manufacturers and partners to develop a product, brand, packaging, and other elements to capture this opportunity. The next step in the process is export preparation, where sellers need to figure out things like trademark protection, import restrictions, and shipping. Once the products are ready and available for sale, sellers then prepare to list them on the appropriate marketplace or their own websites, and things like listing optimization, digital marketing come into play in order to drive sales. And once they reach the end consumer, sellers need to build out a proper customer service and returns process. More importantly, successful sellers constantly capture feedback from their users, which will then inform the next round of product and brand development as this process continues on and on in a cycle. So I'm happy to share that Amazon and Enterprise Singapore have been working closely together to provide expanded support for Singapore sellers who want to use Amazon to sell into the US market. Through both our organizations and a network of partners, Singapore companies can tap on a variety of resources to fill capability gaps across their e-commerce journey, depending on their strategic needs. I would like to share 3 observations of successful companies I've come across. First, focused companies do well. A nail can be very small and still go through a very hard material, and the key is to apply concentrated force in just the right place. The US is a very crowded and competitive market, As such, it's often a better strategy to focus on some winning products compared to trying to sell 1,000 different things without doing anything particularly well. Secondly, brand and connection matters to US customers more than ever before. So beyond distribution, it's about connection. Successful brands think about how to listen to customers and work with them. They think about brand storytelling, and they think about how to resonate with customers' values. Lastly, successful companies plan and commit proper resources to grow. After you plant a seed, you also need to water the plant and fertilize the soil if you want a strong and healthy tree to grow. And similarly, it may not be realistic to expect thousands of customers lining up to buy your product if you have not invested in things like product photography, influencer marketing, advertising, and more. With support from Enterprise Singapore, the Urban Hawker recently launched in New York City, as many of you may have heard. So we're excited to see that the food hall has been doing extremely well since its opening. Even halfway across the world, there is strong recognition and demand for Singapore food. And the immense support for this project just shows that there is an opportunity for even more Singaporean food and products to be brought over to the US. Recently, Enterprise Singapore also brought together 10 local Singapore brands to jointly launch a 4-month Singapore showcase in New York at a department store called Showfields. And for some of these brands, they were primarily shipping cross-border to the US customers through e-commerce, like many of you might start out doing. And similar to successful brands that started from a purely e-commerce model, it's a natural evolution in the journey to create physical touchpoints for consumers to experience the brand in person. I hope to see many more of you in New York in time to come, and I look forward to working closer with you to bring your brands and products from Singapore to the US. I wish you the very best and enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you.